The badge didn't shine anymore. It lay cold on a steel desk under fluorescent lights, next to a resignation paper Clint Eastwood never wrote. The city officials had made their choice. They said he was too reckless, too hardline, too old school for modern policing. What they meant was, he made them nervous. Clint didn't argue. He stood in silence as the chief mumbled bureaucracy, and the mayor signed his fate. The badge was gone, his gun turned in, and just like that, they thought they'd neutralized the storm. They forgot one thing. Justice, Clint muttered, stepping into the rain-soaked street, was never about the damn badge. For a while, he disappeared. The city moved on. New officers came in with clean-shaven faces and clean records. But crime didn't care about clean. In the shadows, something darker was growing. It started with a child's shoe found in a dumpster behind a club. Then another one, burned, bloodied, outside an abandoned warehouse. Official reports were inconclusive. Internal memos went missing. And whispers began to rise in alleyways and empty parking garages. Kids going missing. Nobody looking. One night, a young rookie, Officer Martinez, slipped into a bar at the edge of town and found Clint Eastwood nursing a glass of bourbon. "They're trafficking kids, sir," he whispered. "The badge isn't stopping them." Clint didn't look up. "That's because it's just a badge," he said. "It can't pull a trigger." Martinez left a flash drive on the table. Surveillance footage, faces, names, routes, and at the end, a warehouse off Route 17. No cameras, no exits. A slaughterhouse in disguise. Clint watched the footage that night, the bourbon untouched. By morning, the storm was back. Not with backup, not with permission, just with fury. And a .44 revolver no department ever cataloged. Because justice wears no badge. And Clint Eastwood was about to remind the city what fear really looked like. The city had changed. Neon lights now blurred into darkness, not because the streets got busier, but because people stopped looking. Crime no longer needed shadows. It had permission. Clint Eastwood drove alone that night, an old Dodge Charger humming beneath him like a warhorse roused from sleep. The license plates were dusty, the glove compartment stuffed with only two things, a .44 revolver and a folded photo of a missing girl from Martinez's flash drive. She couldn't have been more than 10. Brown curls, a tiny unicorn necklace, smile too big for someone who hadn't yet learned how cruel the world could be. Clint stared at the photo longer than he should have at the red light. The rage didn't explode, it calcified. Turned cold, that's how he operated. Calm on the surface, like a lake at midnight. But you dive deep, and you drown. His first stop was the Glass House, an underground strip bar run by ex-con Jimmy Reno. The place smelled like cheap perfume, regret, and fear. No one expected to see Clint there. The bartender froze halfway through pouring a drink. Two bouncers recognized him and took a step back without realizing it. Jimmy Reno tried to be brave. "You don't have jurisdiction no more, cowboy," he said, forcing a grin. "Ain't you heard? You're retired." Clint stepped closer, pulled the girl's photo from his coat, and placed it on the bar. "She come through here?" he asked, voice low but sharp, like broken glass under a boot. Jimmy looked at the picture, blinked. Clint didn't wait for a lie. He grabbed Jimmy by the collar, slammed his face into the counter, and whispered like a ghost, "You traffic kids. I don't need a badge. I need rope." By the time Clint walked out, Jimmy had told him about the Green Mile route, a back road used by transporters to avoid police scanners. 3 SUVs armed, children packed like cargo, headed to a warehouse south of the power station. No cameras, no questions. That's all Clint needed. He lit a cigarette under the night sky and stared out at the empty horizon. You don't get to sell kids in my city. Not while I'm breathing. He knew what was waiting. He knew they'd be armed. He knew he might not come back. But none of it mattered. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't law. This was something deeper. This was justice with no badge. And Clint Eastwood had just declared war. The road to the warehouse was a forgotten stretch of cracked asphalt and crooked mile markers, the kind of place where cell signals vanished and screams were swallowed whole. Clint drove with the windows down, the night wind sharp against his face. There was something sacred about the silence out here. It reminded him of his younger days, hunting men across the Badlands, where the only law was what you carried on your hip. The Charger slowed to a crawl just past the old power station. He turned the engine off and stepped out. The desert around him was still. No coyotes, no crickets, just the hum of distant electricity and the throb of evil waiting to be put down. He opened the trunk. Inside, a shotgun, a machete, 3 hand-loaded mags for his revolver, and a rusted hunting knife he'd taken off a cartel leader 20 years ago. Clint didn't believe in speeches, but he believed in preparation, because men who traffic children aren't just criminals, they're demons in flesh. And tonight, demons would beg for mercy and be denied. He crouched low, moving through the scrub and tumbleweed, every footstep deliberate. In the distance, floodlights flickered. The warehouse. Through binoculars, he counted 3 SUVs, just like Jimmy Reno had said. 8 men outside, smoking, laughing. One of them urinated against a chain-link fence. Another leaned into the passenger seat of a van, zipping something, or someone, up. Clint's jaw clenched. That was all the confirmation he needed. He circled wide to the north fence, slipped in through a gap beneath the wire, and took position behind an old oil drum. His first shot was silent. A .44 slug straight through the eye of the man by the fence. No scream, just a thud. The others turned too late. Second shot, chest. Third, leg. The fourth man ran. Clint let him. He needed someone alive for answers later. By the time the 5th man shouted, Clint was already on him, knife flashing in the dark like a viper. Blood sprayed across the side of the SUV. The 6th tried to draw his weapon, but his hand shook. And that was enough of an opening for Clint to pull the shotgun and blow him into the passenger door. Then came the screams from inside the warehouse. Someone was watching. Someone knew Clint was here. He walked forward calmly, like he was born to do this, because in truth, he was. His shadow stretched long under the floodlights, cast like a grim prophecy across the dirt lot. By the time he kicked in the warehouse door, blood already soaked his boots, and death followed close behind. Inside, a different horror waited. Rows of cages, children, muffled, trembling, and beyond them, a man in a suit holding a clipboard surrounded by 3 heavily armed guards. "You're making a mistake," the man said. "This is bigger than you." Clint raised his gun and said nothing, because justice never argued. It just pulled the trigger. The 3 guards moved like trained killers, ex-military, no doubt. Their eyes were calm, their fingers firm on the triggers. But Clint wasn't just some rogue with a badge stripped away. He was a ghost they thought had been buried. And tonight, he came back swinging. The first guard opened fire. Clint dove behind a cage, shielding a terrified boy. Bullets shredded the crates behind him, but his grip on the revolver didn't flinch. He popped up, one shot right between the eyes. The man dropped like a sack of concrete. The second came in hard, trying to flank him. Clint switched to the machete. The blade carved through the man's forearm, disarming him, literally. As the screams echoed through the warehouse, Clint kicked the third in the chest, slammed him into the steel bars of the cage, and ended it with a brutal headbutt that cracked bone. 3 seconds, 3 bodies. The suit hadn't moved an inch. "You can kill every man here," the suit said calmly, "but this network won't die. You're just scratching the surface, cowboy." Clint looked around. The cages, the blinking lights, the children, barely old enough to know what freedom is, staring at him with wide, frightened eyes. "I'm not here to scratch," Clint said, walking toward the suit, boots thudding like a war drum. "I'm here to burn." The suit finally pulled a gun, but his hand trembled. That was his first mistake. His second was thinking Clint would hesitate. Clint shot him in the shoulder, watched him drop the weapon and scream. Then he dragged the man by his silk collar across the floor, past the cages, and slammed him against the wall where blueprints and invoices were pinned. "Tell me where the others are," Clint growled. "Go to hell," the suit spat. Clint leaned in. "Already been," he whispered, "and they know I'm coming back." He tied the suit to a chair, set a flare next to him, and took the hard drive from his pocket, the one Martinez gave him. He plugged it into the nearby laptop and uploaded every file to a secure channel. Names, transactions, politicians. The rot went deep, but not deep enough to hide from Clint. Before leaving, he unlocked every cage, guiding the kids outside where the desert wind blew cool on their faces. Some of them hadn't seen moonlight in weeks. Some didn't speak. One little girl held Clint's hand the whole way, her unicorn necklace glinting under the stars. The warehouse burned behind them. Clint didn't look back. He stood in the dirt with the kids around him, blood drying on his coat, the fire behind casting his silhouette like a cowboy out of myth. For a moment, even the night held its breath, because justice had no badge, no uniform, no law, just a man with a gun and a reason. Morning broke over the city like a dirty secret being dragged into daylight. The news hadn't caught on yet. Sirens hadn't screamed, but somewhere, across the marble corridors of power and the gleaming glass towers of the corrupt, there was a chill in the air. And they didn't know why, but they would soon. Clint Eastwood stood at the doors of City Hall, blood on his boots, dust on his coat, a USB drive clenched in his hand like a loaded weapon. He walked past security like they weren't even there. They didn't stop him. They knew better. He didn't knock. He pushed straight into the mayor's private chamber, where the commissioner, 3 senators, and a corporate liaison were already sipping coffee, laughing about headlines, and planning the next photo op. Then they saw him, and everything changed. The laughter died. The color drained from faces, the smell of fear unmistakable. "Eastwood," the commissioner stammered. You're not even on the force anymore." Clint tossed the USB drive on the desk. "You're right," he said. "I'm not. That's why I got results." They hesitated. One of the aides stepped forward and picked up the drive. "What's on this?" "Evidence, testimonies, bank transfers, faces, everything from your so-called Green Mile route to that warehouse south of the power station," Clint said, "and the names who signed off on it." The room fell silent. One of the senators reached for his phone. Clint stepped forward. "I wouldn't," he growled. Because in that moment, Clint wasn't just a man. He was every broken parent, every failed report, every child that never made it home. The mayor tried to spin it. "We can fix this, Clint. We'll hold a press conference." "No," Clint said flatly. "You'll shut up. You'll sit down, and you'll watch the damn video go live. Because Clint had already hit upload. Across the city, screens flickered. Newsrooms gasped. Journalists scrambled. Parents cried. The world watched footage from inside that warehouse. Children in cages, corpses on the floor. And Clint standing there, soaked in blood and justice. It was undeniable. The system that chewed him up and tossed him aside now had to choke on the truth. Somewhere behind the building, police sirens began to wail. Only this time, they weren't coming for Clint. They were coming for the ones in suits. He walked past them on his way out, lighting a cigarette beneath the American flag flapping above. A reporter ran up, microphone in hand. "Mr. Eastwood, what do you call what you just did?" Clint didn't stop walking. "I call it justice. Just didn't come with a badge this time." The camera zoomed out. One man, walking into the sun, leaving behind a burning city that finally remembered what justice looked like.